a water ballet troupe, the Padded Lilies. The Padded Lilies are united in believing that they are naturally different. For them, fat is forever.
I mean, with the dieting, it just didn't work. It just didn't. I dieted through my childhood, through my teens, and again, each successive diet meant more and more weight put on. By looking at my family and the large number, no pun intended, large number of fat people in my family, it just to me seems inevitable that I would be large.
This is my natural look because it's what I've been given from my generations of predecessors.
Suddenly, scientists are also swinging round to the belief that some people are born to be fat. The scene of an unexpected breakthrough. Addenbrooke's Hospital, Cambridge. Here, in the last year, doctors have glimpsed the first of the genes which make us the weight we are. Professor Stephen O'Reilly and his research team, by studying obese patients, have shown that all of us have a biology which can override our willpower and determination to diet.
We're beginning to see a complete shift around the world in how we think about obesity. That's largely due to the fact that over the last couple of years, we and others have found human beings who have genetic causes for their obesity. These people are not weak-willed, slothful, lazy. They have a medical condition entirely due to a genetic defect, and that causes them to be obese.
Fat people have long suspected it isn't their fault they are fat. They believe it was the way they were born. At 1 year old, Tricia was already huge.
At birth, of course, I was normal size, but within a year, although I was fed normally, nurtured normally, 32 pounds. I mean, I believe that it was just in my genetic makeup to be that size.
I had lost about 100 pounds on one of those diets, started gaining it back, and I hit this point where I went, oh, I could feel my whole body go, this is where I was meant to be. And I thought, why? Why now? Why here? And I realized that my mother was that same height, that same weight, and that same shape.
Labor Day weekend in New Orleans. Twin sisters Sharon and Debbie are taking their very first holiday together at the age of 46.
Oh, is that a cow?
They were brought up by two completely different families. They didn't even know one another existed. They were separated at birth and were only reunited a year ago.
That we were identical twins, you know,
right,
we just knew we
yeah,
were twins. So I see her coming out, and I keep staring at her, and she keeps saying, don't look at me, don't look at me. It was like too intense of a feeling.
The similarities are striking. Over the years, there's been little variation in their looks, their heights, and their weights. When they finally met, there was only 5 pounds difference between them. What is astonishing is that they could not have had more opposite upbringings. Sharon lives in Kentucky and was brought up as a Catholic. She didn't worry about her diet, loved meat, particularly pork and fatty foods.
Oh, look, alligator and pork.
She also did very little exercise.
I would do spot exercises for my arms and my waist, but I'm not going to wake up first thing in the morning like she did and go to the exercise gym. That's not my priority.
Debbie eats fish, but not meat. She lives in New Jersey and was brought up as a Jew. Unlike her twin sister, she exercises regularly and is very health conscious.
I really watch what I eat, and I don't eat dairy products. Not with meat, I don't eat them, and I don't eat meat, I do eat fish. I don't eat poultry. So she's the joy to have over for dinner. Yes. Okay. So, you know, what am I getting her? Oh, the light.
Sharon and Debbie are the perfect experiment. Carbon copies of each other, they are living proof of the power of genes. Their separate environments have hardly influenced their weight. It seems they were born to be slim. What exactly is it that determines our weight? As recently as the 1980s, scientists believed the answer lay in the genes which control the body's metabolic rate, the rate at which food is broken down and turned into energy. They reasoned if the body doesn't burn up food fast enough, you put on weight.
I would say that probably the reason we're fat is because our metabolism is slow. I mean, to suddenly be 32 pounds at a year old, I don't see any other reason for that than metabolism.
Thin people can eat a tremendous amount and still be thin. Fat people can eat next to nothing and still be fat. The amount I'm eating isn't what's making me fat. My metabolism, my genetics, this combination of things is what made me fat.
Glenda weighs 21 stone and has also been fat since she was a child. She too believes that it's not what she eats that makes her fat, but that she has a slow metabolism. She has always wanted to know if it was true. She went to the Dunn Nutrition Unit in Cambridge, where they have specialized in measuring metabolism in the obese for nearly 20 years.
I really want them to tell me why my body doesn't burn up calories like it should do. Because it just doesn't make sense.
She agreed to spend the night in a sealed chamber called a calorimeter room.
If you just pop your bag down on the side and I'll explain to you a little bit what we're going to do. Firstly, this room is going to be completely sealed once we shut the door, and that allows us to measure the air which is coming in through this ventilation shaft here, and then the air which is going out again.
Yeah, I definitely think I was born differently. Why is it that I can sit down and eat a meal exactly the same as everybody else, yet I put on weight? I can go on a diet, I can really, really try, but it doesn't do any good. I'm sure that I've got a slow metabolic rate.
Overnight, the oxygen Glenda breathed in was constantly measured. The body uses 1 litre of oxygen to burn up 5 calories of energy. By measuring how much oxygen Glenda inhaled, They could measure how many calories her body had burnt. The room was kept at a comfortable temperature, so Glenda didn't burn extra energy by shivering or sweating.
Chromatin 4, time, dogger. Southeasterly 5 and 6, southwesterly 3 and 4. Rain, showers, 2 hot. Fisher, southwesterly 3 and 4. Active, 5 and 6. Rain.
In the morning, Glenda was given the result. But it wasn't the answer she expected. Like all fat people, Glenda's metabolic rate is high.
I always imagine my weight was because I got a low metabolism, and that's why I couldn't lose weight. But basically, it's because of one food I've been eating.
That's right. It's one of the great myths of dieting. The number of people who've been in and said to their doctor, "Doctor, I've got a slow metabolism," is absolutely in the thousands, if not millions. We have compared energy expenditure in lean and overweight people. We've looked at siblings, we've looked at parents and children in an attempt to find some evidence of a real difference in energy expenditure between people who remain slim and those who had a tendency to gain weight. What is very clear from all the research is that overweight people actually burn off more energy than slim people. The reason for that is quite simply that bigger people have more cells, they have bigger hearts, bigger lungs, bigger livers. All of these vital organs need energy just to keep ticking over.
So if fat people burn up food quickly, they must be eating too much. It seemed obesity wasn't caused by genes, but by greed. Not to be thin became a sin.
We're here! We're scared! We're fat! That's that! We're here! We're scared! We're fat! That's that! Woo!
Fat activists won't be blamed for their behavior. And their supporters are growing. They believe they are judged by society as having a failure of character for being fat. That they are given unfair treatment in education, employment, and healthcare. The size acceptance movement is saying this is no longer good enough, and demanding that we should take them as they are. The anti-sizists may be happy to be fat, but obesity is known to increase the risk of heart disease and some cancers. Glenda is a care nurse, but she has been told by her doctor that she must lose weight. She has a form of diabetes that, combined with obesity, could kill her.
I've had enough now. I've had enough. I've had enough of being fat, of people's comments. I just want to be normal. I don't want to be slim. I just want to be, average.
Well, I haven't spoken to Dan yet, so I'll speak to him tonight.
When I go to work, I think they're going to say, "You're big, you're fat." Before you've done a morning's work, somebody's going to come out with that comment.
Right, we can take her up in the sky now.
Not too high.
Not too high. 1, 2, 3.
There we are, darling.
I do hurt, I do cry. You see, when you're fat, people look at you as a fat person. They don't look at you beyond what's inside you. I think the worst is when I married Dave, and somebody said to me quite openly, "What the hell have you married a fat person like you for?" Made me feel awful. Then I began to lose my confidence. Then I began to wonder, why did he marry me, which was stupid. You can't help it.
Glenda decided to join a hospital weight loss program. They started her off on 3 pints of milk a day for 6 weeks, to prove to her that there is nothing wrong, except that she eats too much.
Now, the purpose of this food on the diet is really to demonstrate and to show that you can lose weight, and to really be the first step into what is going to be the longer program. It's about 1,000 calories a day, so it's not very low in calories, but what it is doing is providing her with the protein that she needs, it's providing her with the vitamins she'll be taking, with everything she needs except excessive calories. Well, I'd like to measure your weight something, so that's quite important these days, so if you come stand yourself up, and perhaps if you just lift that up there, I'll flip this round here. The great thing is it allows her to move into a position where she doesn't have to make choices about food, about how to cook, and it works.
Since her wedding day, Glenda has tried many different diets. This time, to keep up her motivation, she decided to keep a video diary.
Doing a diet diary. We're going to have to get some super glue. I think she's got it.
Well, I'm back as about. Mom! When I looked at these 3 pints of milk the first day, I thought, my God, you must be joking. However am I going to survive working on 3 pints of milk? But, as you can see, we started drinking it bit by bit with coffee, plain milk, and we've done it, and it's not too bad now. If I stick to it, I'm going to lose weight. This is what I wanted to do more than anything, is to lose weight. And for people to pass me in the street and say, I didn't recognise you, which is a wonderful feeling. But no, I haven't really been tempted at all. I mean, I've painted my fingernails, I've done my face, I've done things to keep me occupied, to stop thinking of food. Mum must have the cleanest drawers in Bedford upstairs. I could take my bedroom drawers out and everything, just to keep me stopping eating. How can I explain it? My cheekbones are now appearing. I don't seem to, I've lost all my fat round here and up here, and it seems to be a lot better. My double chin here, I'm hoping will disappear.
The padded lilies have long since given up the struggle. They had been dieting ever since childhood. Nothing had ever worked, although they all remember unpleasant and extreme attempts to lose weight.
At the age of 8, I was given speed to help me control my weight. In fact, the whole family was taking it off me, which made for a real interesting family dynamic.
By the time Timna was 13, she was so fat her teeth were wired together to make her stop eating.
My mother thought it was a great idea, and I thought it was a great idea. That's the really damaging part, is not that it was done to me, but that I said, yes, I'm so awful and so horrible, I need to do that to myself.
Rebecca was only 14 when she was trained to reject food. She was wired up and given electric shocks.
You'd sit in front of a mirror where you couldn't see who was doing the shock, and every time you'd go to take a bite, you'd get shocked. And I thought, you know, I took it as a personal thing because I didn't lose weight on this. I mean, like, you know, rats could lose weight on this, but I couldn't. And, I mean, I just did it for another 20 years, trying all sorts of things, you know, starving, the liquid diet, I did the fen, and it came to a point where I thought, I don't want to live this way.
Is it just greed that explains the surge in Western obesity? As a nation, America is now the fattest in the world, with the UK close behind. Why are we all getting fatter? It appears that human beings have a problem when presented with lots of food. They eat it. For 3.5 million years, our ancestors had to fight over scarce food. Today we are confronted with endless choice. Why we find food so difficult to resist fascinates Professor James Hill.
Obesity is really increasing in the Western world. It's becoming one of the major threats to health in developed countries, and also is increasing in developing countries. What is happening is that we're living in an environment that provides an abundance of foods and low levels of physical activity, and our physiology isn't set up to keep us lean in such an environment.
The problem is our appetite. A powerful biological drive to eat evolved over millions of years. It was essential for the survival of the species.
Eating is one of the most important functions for survival of the human species. So think about it. Here we are with, we're machines that are really designed to get enough food intake. We're designed to get enough even when times are scarce so that we have these drives to eat. This is a great adaptive scenario. You want to eat to survive.
Today our appetite works against all of us. Because we are so sedentary, our energy requirements are small. However, modern food is high in energy, so we really only need to eat very little.
Now we're just saturated with good-tasting, high-energy-dense foods, easily available. You can go in a restaurant and you can order anything. Why wouldn't we, under those situations, really have a high level of food intake? And that's the problem, is that we're driven to eat and we're given foods that really push all the buttons to eat more.
The idea that there's an evolutionarily based biological drive to eat is clearly an interesting idea, but until recently it just remained that, just an idea. Most people believe that our appetites were controlled entirely by willpower and voluntary action. What we've discovered in the last few years is our brains are actually hardwired to eat.
28-year-old Sven's life is dominated by the drive to eat. He could literally eat himself to death. It's not a question of willpower or choice. No matter how much food he consumes, he always feels hungry. For doctors, Sven demonstrates that there is some sort of hardwired switch which turns our hunger on or off. And his had to be faulty. But Sven wasn't always like this. Until he was 7, his appetite was completely normal. Then he had an operation to remove a brain tumor. From that day on, he ate and ate.
Wenn also immer hungrig ist und das zeigt sich darin, dass er jedes Geld, was er zur Verfügung hat, sofort sich Eiscreme kauft, Süßigkeiten kauft oder andere Lebensmittel. Wenn dieses Geld ausgegeben wird, dass er dann, wenn er nach Hause kommt, wieder fragt, ob er nicht Taschengeld bekommt. Und wenn wir also schlafen und wir hören dann irgendwelche Geräusche, dann ist Sven in der Küche und leert den Kühlschrank. Und morgens, wenn wir daraufhin ansprechen, dann sagt er, na, er hat ja so einen großen Hunger gehabt und wir kontrollieren den Kühlschrank, dann ist da nichts mehr drin. Ne?
Sven is only this slim because of enormous efforts on the part of his family and his doctor. What happened was that the operation to remove the tumor somehow damaged his hypothalamus, an important nerve center in the brain. Damage to his hypothalamus is what changed his eating behavior.
Well, for a boy like Sven, for him it is extremely difficult to control his eating behavior because he is driven by a force. He wants to eat everything. If you would give him 3 dinners, he would eat 3 dinners. And if you would leave him alone, he would eat anything. He would eat from a bin, probably. Actually, we know that patients who have this tumor, they don't die because of the tumor. Most of them die because of the overweight that they develop.
Sehr schlimm. Und zwar aus dem Grunde sehr schlimm, weil wir jetzt also auch schon so ein Denken haben, nur essen und trinken. Und weil wir mit der Situation einfach nicht mehr fertig werden, weil wir an Grenzen gestoßen sind, die wir einfach nicht mehr überspringen können.
Something in Sven's hypothalamus had to be keeping him hungry. They knew the hypothalamus was involved in switching appetite on and off, but decades of research had brought scientists no closer to finding where and what it was. Then along came a big, fat plea. From the day it was born, this mouse had never stopped eating.
Well, in the Jackson Laboratory in Maine, they breed millions of mice a year. And every now and then a mouse appears that they call a variant, and they can establish using breeding experiments that a particular variant is so because of a defect in a single gene. And so whereas a normal mouse looks like this, one day in the 1950s a mouse appeared that looked like this. You'll notice that mouse is rather obese.
Friedman spent 10 years comparing the fat mouse with other thin mice. Then they found something in the thin mice. It was in a totally unexpected place, the fat cells. If we overeat, fat cells blow up like balloons to hold more and more fat. In this scan of a woman's body, the fat cells are mostly around the outer layer. In men, fat is stored around the internal organs. Friedman's team found that fat cells manufactured a hitherto unknown hormone, leptin.
There had been a view of the fat cell, really over the last 50 years or so, that it was a somewhat boring cell, that it was a storage depot, really a bit of inactive lard, not highly intelligent, unlike our clever brain cells or our clever nerve cells or our clever endocrine cells, hormonal producing cells. And to find out that the fat cell was itself producing a hormone and actually actively participating in a communication network was again revolutionary. So it's changed the way we view fat tissue ever since. It's not as dumb as we thought.
The dumb cell is turning out to be a smart storage system. The fat cells of the thin mice were manufacturing lots of the leptin. But the researchers quickly discovered that the obese mouse had none. So Friedman gave the fat mouse leptin to see if it would stop eating.
The results of the injections were pretty profound. The mice lost 30% of their weight after 2 weeks and 40% of their weight after 4 weeks.
The paper from Jeff Friedman appeared in Nature in December 1994, and as one read it, the dawning realization that this was a really seminal discovery came upon one. Well, what goes through my mind is that maybe we've got our first handle on understanding what the molecules are that control body weight. And really the hairs on the back of my neck stood on end. It was wonderfully exciting.
In a country where 1 in 3 adults is overweight, the news that leptin made fat mice thin in a matter of weeks had a massive popular appeal. Researchers hypothesized that the hormone leptin was a messenger molecule. It traveled through the blood and up to the brain. There, they guessed, it passed information to the hypothalamus, telling it to turn off the appetite. Could leptin indeed be the miracle cure for obesity? The answer was in the bottom of a freezer. 2 blood samples which were to make medical history. They had been lying there waiting for 9 months. Until the discovery of leptin, the head of the laboratory had not been at all interested in researching the causes of obesity.
I didn't know how to take the field forward. I really just ignored it as a scientific problem. I barely read the literature. I wasn't terribly interested. So I think fields move forward when something makes it possible, a paradigm shift, and I think the discovery of leptin was such a paradigm shift in thinking about obesity.
Professor O'Reilly hired a new research fellow in the lab. He wanted her to look for leptin.
I went to Professor O'Reilly and asked him whose leptin he'd like me to measure. And he had in mind that there were a couple of patients he'd been thinking about for some time, and always wondered about their leptin levels. So I went and we dug out this sample from the bottom of the freezer somewhere. These particular children he had always been interested in because there was something quite unusual about them. There were 2 children in a family, and they were very, very obese from an early age. And all the conventional tests in these children had shown them to be normal. And yet something didn't fit. There was still something else going on.
It was the first time she had ever done the test. If Dr. Faruqi found there was no leptin in the samples, it meant that this could be the cause of the 2 cousins' obesity. It would be the first proof that leptin played a vital role in controlling appetite, not just in mice, but also in humans. In the morning she went to tell her boss what she had found. There was no leptin in the first blood sample.
Well, I went up to see him, and I showed him the results, and I said, well, I think I can measure leptin now, and it seems to be working. But it's very strange, this particular patient's blood sample doesn't look like there's any leptin, and yet isn't she very obese? And he said, oh my God, do you know what this means?
There were a number of interesting implications, the first being that leptin was just as important for human beings as it was for mice, and secondly, that as really the first genetic defect in humans found to cause obesity, we really had the first evidence that you could become very obese as a human being through no conscious fault of your own, but simply through a defect in your genes.
In fact, I was very nervous that perhaps I'd made a mistake and raised his and everybody else's hopes. So I actually joked with him that, in fact, that if the test doesn't prove to be correct, that perhaps I should resign. And actually, he didn't give me a chance to resign. He said that if it wasn't true, he'd sack me.
One child's obesity was so extreme, it had previously caused her knee joints to collapse. And there was no doubt both had enormous appetites. Nothing seemed to stop their hunger. The children's parents agreed Dr. Faruqi could take more blood samples to confirm her results. She hadn't made a mistake. The children didn't have any leptin.
I actually said to him, well, there's good news and there's bad news. He looked actually stunned, as if, oh my God, don't tell me it's not going to be true. And I said, the good news is that yes, I've repeated the test and it's definitely true. These 2 children have got no leptin in the blood. And he said, what's the bad news? And I said, well, the bad news is you can't sack me.
They administered leptin to one of the cousins. The child lost a stone in weight. But scientific excitement was short-lived. The gene defect from which these children suffered proved to be very rare. The majority of fat people do in fact have lots of leptin. But while leptin was no magic bullet for obesity, it was the first link in a chain of research that is revealing the mechanisms that control our appetite.
What happened then is the attention of several groups around the world was focused on severely obese children, in the hope that perhaps if they didn't have leptin deficiency, if we looked further along the pathway of where leptin was working, we might find defects there too.
And so it was to prove. At 2 years of age, Alina was already so heavy her legs were beginning to bow under her weight, and she was always hungry. By 4, she had become obese. They knew she wasn't lacking leptin, and yet Professor Gruters felt something was wrong with Alina.
They realized that she was getting overweight. More and more. Every 3 months visit that she had gained a lot of weight.
Wenn wir den Tisch zu Hause gedeckt haben und versucht haben, ganz normal zu essen, hat sie besonders schnell gegessen, mit der Tendenz zum Reinstopfen, weil sie immer mehr wollte.
We knew that there must be something wrong with Alina's appetite, with her craving for food, and we started to think about what it could be.
Then last year, Professor Gruters was at a conference in America about genetics and the appetites of fat mice.
I went to this conference in Portland, where I first learned about another fat mice who had orange-yellow hair.
It seemed that the gene that caused the red hair in this mouse was linked to its obesity, and Alina had red hair. Like Alina, this mouse had plenty of leptin, but a fault prevented the leptin from working. This was a new and different gene defect. It was hidden deep within the hypothalamus.
I sat down together with my colleague Heiko and I said, well, I have seen a mouse, a yellow, orange hair mouse who was fat, and I was considering, couldn't Alina have a similar genetic problem? And we sat down together and played puzzle.
Professor Gruter's team found that Alina did have a gene defect, similar to the red-haired mouse. Finding another defective gene in the appetite control system meant researchers were beginning to lay bare the pathways in the brain that control hunger in us all.
We were pleased.
We now know that fat cells send leptin to the hypothalamus as a signal to stop eating. Once inside the hypothalamus, this message is picked up and passed along a hardwired network of neurons. But just one faulty gene can stop that message being passed along. When that happens, our hunger isn't switched off. There are many genes and many connections. In all of us, minor variations in any one of these genes could make the difference between having a large or small appetite.
It's quite obvious to me that there must be individuals who are born with a more intense or a less intense appetite than others, and put in the right situation or the wrong situation with abundant access to food. Those individuals born with greater appetite drive are much more likely to become obese.
The news that some people may be fat because a defective gene might be keeping them hungry was greeted with very mixed feelings by the padded lilies.
I think it takes away the shame that I got from years of dieting. Years of dieting, years of thinking I hadn't exercised enough, that I was somehow lazy. I think it takes away that.
I think it just confirms to me what inherently I knew, is that I was different. And it makes sense to me. It makes sense that I have a predisposition for hunger.
As a child, I was very aware of being more hungry than the other kids. Not of feeling hungry all the time necessarily, but of sitting down to eat with other kids, and they would be done, and I would want more food.
You know, the first person who comes up to me and says, oh, you're one of those people with the fat gene, and that's why you're eating that hot dog, that person is going to get fat on.
It doesn't matter to me that there's some reason for my being fat that makes it okay to society now. I'm okay. I'm not just a fat sloth.
Right.
I have a defect.
Right.
Well, that pisses me off even worse because, God damn it, it was wrong for society to treat me the way it did, whether I have a defect or not. I mean, I'm a human being, you know?
The problem of being overweight, of course, cannot be entirely determined by our genes.
You always beat me in sport. Well, I try to.
Once again, twins have provided a vital clue. Ron and Don were born identical, but there is one striking difference. Today, Don is now 5.5 stone lighter than his twin brother.
Pretty good. Well, at least that last 10 fell over there. Yeah.
For much of their lives, there was hardly a pound difference in their weight. Brought up together, they ate the same things and lived similar lives.
Oh, when I graduated from college, I weighed a good bit less than I do now, and I'd give anything to weigh that now.
But when did you start putting on weight?
After college.
After college.
You know, get married, eat regularly, eat good cooking, and so forth.
How did Don become so slim, while Ron continues to struggle with his weight? And yet the two of them ate almost identical amounts of food.
Maybe I can catch up now.
Ron has tried every diet possible to lose weight, but is a complete couch potato. What is Don's secret?
That's not bad.
Last year I decided to run the New York Marathon and went through their training program and would run anywhere from 20 to 40 miles a week, depending on where I was in that training program. And I'm pretty much doing that now. But then when I'm not training for those events, I just run 3 or 4 miles a day. Now that's my goal. I don't always get 20 miles in, but that's what I try to keep as a minimum.
1 mile sounds excessive to me.
It appears that even if you are born identical and share the same environment, you can override your genetic makeup. Don and Ron were part of a study that showed that if identical twins differed in weight, it was due to exercise. Glenda has bought a new bike to get more exercise. She now weighs 11 stone less than on her wedding day. And she is determined to keep up her diet and exercise program until she loses her double chin.
You take this off and you've got a new me. I've got cheekbones now. I never had cheekbones before. My eyes always seemed so tiny, but because the fat has gone, my eyes and my bust, well, I actually haven't got anything there now. I used to be quite a big busted. I used to be a 52. I'm now 42. That's 10 inches gone off. I felt so ashamed of being so big. But then one day something just clicked and I knew I'd got to do it. I feel as though I'm a new person. This person's escaped. That's normal now.
So I said to her, like, you know, all that weight that you've lost, you think that could have been a third person in bed. We could have had 3 people in bed with us, you know, because she's lost, well, how much is it now, Gal?
11 stone over.
11 stone, that's a big person, isn't it?
I really do not have difficulty in helping people lose weight. What I have difficulties and what I struggle with is helping people maintain the weight that they have lost. That is the real crux of the matter. It's hard to lose weight, but it's even harder for people like this to keep their weight off long term.
These new breakthroughs in understanding appetite have revealed that some people are hardwired to feel more hungry than others. For them, the road to permanent weight loss will always be long and hard. At the moment, there is no easy answer to obesity. In Alina's case, the malfunctioning gene that causes her to overeat may have been identified, but as yet no treatment is available for her.
Wenn ich mit Alina auf die Straße gehe und die Leute sie dumm angucken oder sogar eine dumme Bemerkung machen, dann bin ich sehr, sehr traurig, weil es meine Tochter ist, die ich unendlich lieb habe und die eigentlich auch schon einen schweren Weg hinter sich hat und auch noch einen schweren Weg vor sich hat. Und es tut mir sehr, sehr weh, weil ich sie über alles liebe und sie überhaupt nichts dafür kann, dass sie so dick ist.
When I was working with obese patients, I really judged them of being not strong enough to control their body. But now I really know, because I have seen it, that there are defects and that there might be a lot of defects, a lot of genetic defects that we can't control, that cause us to eat. And I feel sorry for my patients that I have misjudged and that I have been cruel to.
The excitement of the last 4 years in obesity research, I really think can't be exaggerated. As a physician, I think we will be able to identify specific types of obesity that we may be able to actually treat. And I think on a more societal level, the understanding that obesity can have genetic and basic fundamental causes and is not always due to moral failing, may permeate society, and we may treat obese people differently.
The breakthroughs in finding new pathways in the brain have revealed that our appetites are not entirely under our free will. There is a powerful biological drive to eat. For the first time, scientists are understanding why it is difficult for so many of us to be slim. If our biology is working against us, is there anything we can do? Next week on Fat Files, a new generation of drugs helps people get thin and grow muscle. And scientists are discovering secret ingredients in everyday foods that help us lose weight.
From highs to lows, days that shook the world.